she was the perfect wife and mother. Until her secret life with 10 different men was exposed. What began as infidelity soon turned into a chilling crime no one could have predicted. The perfect wife on the surface, Claire Matthews had it all. She was the kind of woman who drew admiration from everyone who crossed her path. To her neighbors in the quiet suburb of Crestwood, she was a loving wife, a supportive mother, and a dependable friend. At 35, Claire carried herself with elegance. Her long brunette hair framed a warm smile, and her polite manners left people thinking she was the perfect role model for women in the neighborhood. Her husband, Daniel Matthews, a 38-year-old accountant, often described her as his anchor. They had been married for over a decade, raising 2 children in a modest but beautiful 2-story house. Every morning, Claire walked her children to the school bus, waved at her neighbors, and carried herself with a grace that seemed untouchable. Daniel worked long hours, but he never worried. He believed Claire was at home, managing the household and volunteering at the local church. But behind that perfect image, something darker was brewing. Claire had secrets, dangerous secrets. While she presented herself as a devoted wife, she had been leading another life. Not one with just one hidden lover, but with multiple men. 10 of them to be exact. Each of these men believed they had a special place in her heart. None of them knew the others existed. The story began to unravel on a rainy Thursday evening in March. Daniel was working late, as usual. He decided to surprise Claire with flowers on his way home. But when he arrived earlier than expected, he found the house strangely quiet. Their children were staying overnight with his sister, so Claire should have been home alone. Yet the moment he opened the door, he heard voices upstairs. Laughter. A man's voice. Daniel froze. For a moment, he thought maybe it was a television show. But as he climbed the staircase, the laughter grew louder, clearer. His heart pounded, his hands trembled. Slowly, he opened the bedroom door, and what he saw shattered his world. Claire was there, with another man. Shock hit Daniel like a wave, but the nightmare didn't end there. The man quickly grabbed his clothes and fled through the window, leaving Daniel face to face with the woman he thought he knew better than anyone else. Claire begged for forgiveness, swearing it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Daniel, broken and speechless, walked out. He spent the night in his car, his mind racing. But what he didn't know was that this was just the tip of the iceberg. Because Claire's affair wasn't an isolated incident. Over the coming weeks, whispers started to spread in Crestwood. A neighbor spotted Claire leaving a motel on the outskirts of town with a different man. Another saw her at a restaurant, holding hands with someone who was definitely not her husband. Soon, Daniel began to suspect that his wife's betrayal wasn't a single mistake. Driven by anger and curiosity, he started digging. He checked her phone, her emails, her social media accounts. What he discovered left him numb. Multiple secret profiles, coded messages, hidden photographs, and a web of lies stretching back years. Claire had been living a double life, juggling secret relationships with 10 different men, each believing they were the only one. But this was more than betrayal. This was deception on a scale Daniel never imagined. And soon, it would spiral into something much darker, something deadly. The truth about Claire Matthews was only beginning to surface, and Crestwood would never be the same again. Whispers in the dark. After the shocking discovery in his own home, Daniel Matthews couldn't sleep. The image of his wife with another man replayed in his mind like a cruel nightmare. But the more he thought about it, the more certain he became. This wasn't just one affair. Claire was hiding something much bigger. The next morning, Daniel tried to act normal. He sat at the breakfast table with Claire, who wore her usual sweet smile, pouring coffee like nothing had happened. But there was tension in the air, sharp and suffocating. Daniel couldn't ignore it. "Who was he, Claire?" he asked quietly, without looking up from his cup. Claire froze, then gave him a rehearsed answer. "It was a mistake, Dan. Just one time. It won't happen again." But Daniel knew she was lying. Her eyes avoided his. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred her coffee. It was the same woman he'd trusted for years. Yet now she felt like a stranger sitting across from him. That day, Daniel made a decision. If Claire wouldn't give him the truth, he would find it himself. He started small. While she was in the shower, he checked her phone. To his surprise, it was spotless. No suspicious texts, no strange calls. It looked too clean, almost as if she had carefully erased every trace. That only deepened his suspicion. One night, while Claire was asleep, Daniel searched her laptop. Hidden in a folder disguised as grocery lists was a series of emails. Each one was from a different man. Romantic, passionate, sometimes desperate. He scrolled in disbelief. There was Michael, a hot-headed bartender who called Claire his escape from reality. Ethan, a wealthy businessman, promised to buy her anything she wanted. Jason, a quiet, almost obsessive man, wrote poetry about her. Daniel's stomach turned as he realized his wife wasn't involved with one man, or even two. There were many. Over the following weeks, whispers began to spread through Crestwood. Daniel wasn't the only one noticing strange behavior. A neighbor, Mrs. Rogers, mentioned seeing Claire at a motel on the edge of town. Another neighbor spotted her at a cafe, holding hands with a man who was definitely not Daniel. The image of the perfect suburban wife was beginning to crack. Karen Miller, Claire's best friend, began to sense something was wrong too. Claire had been cancelling plans, ignoring calls, and vanishing for hours without explanation. One afternoon, Karen saw her getting into a stranger's car outside the grocery store. Alarm bells rang in her mind. When Karen asked her about it later, Claire brushed it off with a laugh. Oh, just a friend from out of town. But Karen didn't buy it. The more people talked, the more Daniel's anger turned into obsession. He began following Claire, tracking her movements. What he saw left him shaken. She wasn't meeting one man, she was meeting different men, sometimes in the same week, sometimes on the same day. Each encounter seemed rehearsed. With Michael, she was playful and wild. With Ethan, she was sophisticated, charming. With Jason, she played the role of a fragile woman needing comfort. Claire was like a chameleon, changing herself depending on who she was with. Daniel's mind spiraled. Who was this woman I married? How long has she been living this double life? He started piecing together her lies. The church meetings she attended were actually rendezvous with Michael. The book club was dinners with Ethan. The nights she claimed to be visiting her mother were hours spent in motels with Jason. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was deception on a grand scale. Daniel confronted her one evening. How many, Claire? How many men are you seeing? Claire's face went pale. For a moment, she tried to deny it, but Daniel's tone left no room for lies. Finally, she whispered, "It's complicated, Dan. You wouldn't understand." Complicated? That word echoed in his head. He had given her everything. His loyalty, his trust, his life. And yet she had built an entire world of lies behind his back. The marriage was hanging by a thread, but Daniel's torment didn't end there. Because the men Claire was involved with weren't content with being kept in the shadows. Some of them believed they were her true love. Some thought she would leave Daniel for them. Others, like Jason, had become dangerously attached. It was only a matter of time before these hidden lives collided. And when they did, Crestwood would witness a chain of events that turned betrayal into bloodshed. When worlds collide, Claire Matthews believed she was in control. For years, she had juggled 10 different men, weaving lies so carefully that none of them truly suspected the others. To her, it was a thrilling game, one that gave her power, attention, and the kind of affection she claimed her marriage lacked. But the game was starting to slip from her hands. It began with Michael Turner, the bartender with a temper. One Friday night, Michael stormed into Claire's favorite cafe, furious. He had found a message on her phone when she wasn't looking. A message not from him, but from Ethan Brooks, the wealthy businessman. "You said I was the only one," Michael hissed, slamming his fist against the table. Heads turned, but Claire tried to calm him down, whispering that he misunderstood, that Ethan was just a friend. Michael didn't believe her. His anger burned, but he swallowed it, for now. What he didn't know was that Ethan had already started to question things too. Ethan Brooks wasn't like Michael. He was composed, polished, and calculating. But when Claire canceled their dinner date for the third time in a row, he grew suspicious. He hired a private investigator, something he often did in business deals when he needed the truth. Within a week, the investigator delivered photographs that shattered Ethan's illusion. Claire was seen walking into a motel with Michael. Another picture showed her laughing in a park with Jason Cole, the quiet, mysterious man who wrote her poetry. Ethan's pride turned to rage. He wasn't just betrayed, he felt humiliated. Meanwhile, Jason's obsession was spiraling out of control. He had begun following Claire after their meetings, leaving notes on her doorstep, and even watching the Matthews house at night. His infatuation with her had grown into something dangerous, something unstable. By now, Daniel Matthews, her husband, had gathered enough evidence to confront Claire again. But instead of answers, he received silence. Claire would look at him with cold detachment, as though the woman he married no longer existed. "Who are you, Claire?" he asked one night, his voice breaking. Her reply chilled him to the bone. "I'm whoever I need to be." Those words haunted Daniel, but they also hinted at something bigger. Claire wasn't just lying for the thrill. She was manipulating, controlling, bending men to her will. But how long could that last before one of them snapped? The breaking point came on a stormy evening. Claire had planned to meet Michael at his apartment, but when she arrived, Ethan was already there, waiting. He had tracked her, determined to confront her, and the man he believed was his rival. "What the hell is this?" Michael growled, his fists clenched. Ethan stood tall, his expensive suit soaked from the rain. "I should be asking you that. Do you have any idea who she really is?" Claire tried to calm them, spinning excuses, telling each man what he wanted to hear. But her words no longer worked. The truth had slipped out, and the two men knew it. Voices rose, fists nearly flew. Claire left in a panic, slamming the door behind her. But the damage was done. Michael and Ethan now knew about each other, and word began to spread. Soon, whispers reached the other men. Jason, already unstable, became violent in his jealousy. Another lover, a gym trainer named Ryan, showed up unannounced at Claire's house, demanding answers. The delicate balance she had built was collapsing, her web of lies tearing apart at the seams. For the first time, Claire felt fear. She was no longer in control. The men weren't fighting for her attention. They were fighting against each other. And some were already imagining what life would be like if they removed the competition completely. Detective Laura Hayes entered the story around this time. A call had come into the Crestwood Police Department about a disturbance at Michael's bar. Two men shouting, nearly breaking into a fight over a woman named Claire. Laura, sharp and observant, filed the report, but sensed something deeper was brewing. By the time she started asking questions, Claire's name was on the lips of half the town. Daniel, drowning in betrayal, found himself at the police station too, confessing to Detective Hayes that his wife wasn't just cheating, but living an entire second life. Laura didn't know whether to believe him until she started connecting the dots. Multiple men, multiple sightings, and rising tempers. Claire Matthews wasn't just a wife with secrets anymore. She was the center of a storm, one that was about to explode into violence. And when it did, the town of Crestwood would see just how dangerous one woman's lies could become. Blood on the pavement. The storm that had been brewing around Claire Matthews finally broke. Her secret web of lovers, once hidden in shadows, began to unravel violently, spilling into the streets of Crestwood. Detective Laura Hayes had sensed it coming. Each week, new complaints poured into the police station. Arguments outside bars, threats whispered in alleyways, strange men loitering near Claire's neighborhood. All the reports had one name in common: Claire Matthews. It was no longer whispers. It was war. The first explosion happened outside Michael Turner's bar. Michael was already drinking when Ethan Brooks walked in, his polished shoes tapping against the wooden floor. The two men locked eyes instantly, resentment burning. "You think you're better than me?" Michael spat, standing up so quickly his chair toppled over. "You think money makes you special? She loves me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "No, she plays you like a fool. She told me you were nothing more than a mistake." The bar went silent. Then, in a flash, fists flew. Bottles shattered. Blood splattered across the floor as the two men brawled like wild animals. Police had to drag them apart, each swearing vengeance. Each convinced Claire belonged to him. Claire, meanwhile, was nowhere to be found. That night, Jason Cole lurked outside her house, watching from the shadows. His obsession had spiraled into madness. He scribbled in a notebook, page after page of Claire's name, surrounded by broken, fragmented sentences. "She's mine. She promised me forever. They can't have her." When Daniel, her husband, arrived home, he caught a glimpse of Jason's figure vanishing into the darkness. His stomach sank. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was dangerous. Claire hadn't only destroyed their marriage. She had unleashed a nightmare on the entire town. The breaking point came one late evening. Claire had promised Ethan she would finally meet him to set things straight. But Michael followed her there, his rage boiling. When Claire entered Ethan's luxury condo, Michael forced his way inside minutes later. The confrontation was explosive. Michael shoved Ethan against the wall, shouting that Claire was his, that he wouldn't let anyone steal her away. Ethan, red with fury, pulled a gun from his drawer, a weapon he kept for business protection. The room froze. Claire screamed, begging them to stop, her voice trembling with desperation. But Michael only laughed bitterly. "Go ahead, shoot me. Then maybe she'll finally be yours." Ethan's hand shook, the gun wavering. At that moment, Claire realized her lies had pushed them past the point of reason. No matter what she said, one of them might die that night. She managed to slip out during the chaos, running down the stairwell into the rainy streets. Neighbors later reported hearing shouting, then a gunshot. By the time the police arrived, Ethan was bleeding from a gash on his head, and Michael had fled. The news spread like wildfire. A wealthy businessman attacked, a bartender missing, and at the center of it all, a woman whose name everyone now knew. Claire Matthews, Detective Hayes, now leading the case, called Daniel into the station again. "Mr. Matthews," she said firmly, "your wife isn't just cheating. She's at the center of multiple violent incidents. Do you have any idea how many men she's been involved with?" Daniel buried his face in his hands. 10, at least 10, the detective stared, stunned. 10? That number wasn't just shocking, it was dangerous. 10 men, each manipulated into believing they were special, each desperate, jealous, and unstable. It was only a matter of time before another violent clash occurred. And it did. 2 nights later, Jason Cole confronted Ryan, the gym trainer, outside Claire's house. Neighbors woke to the sound of shouting and the crash of glass. Jason had pulled a knife, wild-eyed and shaking, screaming that Claire belonged to him. Ryan fought back, but not before Jason slashed his arm. Police swarmed the street, lights flashing red and blue against the rain-soaked pavement. Jason was arrested, muttering Claire's name over and over as if in a trance. Ryan was rushed to the hospital, bleeding but alive. The Matthews' quiet suburban street had become a crime scene. Claire, however, remained eerily calm. Even as her world crumbled, she seemed detached, almost cold. When Detective Hayes questioned her, Claire denied everything. "They're obsessed," she said smoothly. "They're all crazy, and I never asked for this." But Hayes wasn't convinced. Too many lies, too many coincidences. The detective suspected Claire wasn't just a victim of men's obsession. She was pulling strings, manipulating, feeding their jealousy like gasoline on fire. And Daniel, he sat alone in his darkened house, staring at wedding photos that now felt like cruel jokes. His wife, the woman he thought he knew, had dragged him into a nightmare that would never end. But the nightmare wasn't over yet, because one of the men had disappeared. Michael Turner, the hot-headed bartender, was nowhere to be found. His friends hadn't seen him. His bar sat dark and empty, and his phone was disconnected. Had he gone into hiding? Or had someone silenced him? Detective Hayes had a chilling thought. If the men were willing to fight each other for Claire, what would they be willing to do to her? The final secret. The disappearance of Michael Turner sent shockwaves through Crestwood. For weeks, the hot-headed bartender had been at the center of fights and chaos, his obsession with Claire Matthews turning violent. Now he was gone. Detective Laura Hayes immediately suspected foul play. But the bigger question was, who had the most to gain from Michael's disappearance? Ethan, the wealthy businessman humiliated by him. Jason, the obsessive lover with a knife in his pocket. Or perhaps someone no one suspected yet. The investigation intensified. Detectives searched Michael's apartment and found his wallet, keys, and half-packed bag. He hadn't left voluntarily. In the trash, they discovered scraps of paper with Claire's name written over and over. His obsession with her had consumed him until the very end. Meanwhile, Claire acted strangely calm. When questioned, she shrugged. Michael was unstable. He probably ran away. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something darker, something cold and calculating. Daniel Matthews, her husband, was falling apart. His once quiet life had become a circus of flashing police lights, screaming men, and whispers from neighbors. He had tried to hold on, to believe there was a way out. But now, with Michael missing, he feared the worst. Detective Hayes continued digging. Phone records showed Claire had called Michael the night he vanished, just minutes before his phone went dead. Surveillance cameras caught Claire's car near the edge of town, close to the old quarry. The quarry. When police searched the area, they made a chilling discovery. In the shallow water at the bottom of the quarry lay Michael Turner's body, beaten and bruised. The official autopsy confirmed he had been killed before being dumped. Crestwood was horrified. The story that had once been about infidelity was now about murder. Detective Hayes believed Michael's death was the breaking point, the moment Claire's double life spiraled from lies into bloodshed. But proving it was another matter. The investigation revealed more than anyone expected. Ethan admitted to pulling a gun on Michael, but swore he hadn't killed him. Jason was in custody for attacking Ryan, and insisted he had nothing to do with Michael's disappearance. Ryan, recovering from his stab wound, also denied involvement. But all of them admitted one thing. Claire had promised each of them something different. To Michael, she promised she would leave her husband. To Ethan, she promised marriage. To Jason, she promised forever. To Ryan, she promised love. 10 men, 10 promises, all lies. Detective Hayes began to see the bigger picture. Claire wasn't just unfaithful. She had manipulated these men, weaving them into a tangled web of obsession. And when Michael threatened to expose her, she silenced him. The final blow came when Karen Miller, Claire's best friend, confessed something she had kept secret. A week before Michael vanished, Claire had told her in confidence, "If Michael doesn't stop threatening me, I'll make sure he never bothers me again." It was the missing piece Hayes needed. Claire Matthews was arrested at dawn, led out of her perfect suburban home in handcuffs as neighbors gathered in stunned silence. Her children cried. Daniel stood frozen, and the cameras captured every second. At trial, the truth spilled out like poison. Prosecutors revealed Claire's double life with 10 lovers, her manipulative tactics, and her pattern of lies. Witnesses testified to her ability to charm, seduce, and control. And then came the most damning evidence. Traces of Michael's blood found in the trunk of Claire's car. The courtroom gasped. Claire's defense argued she was a victim of obsessive men, that she had been caught in a dangerous storm she never asked for. But the jury saw through it. They saw a woman who lived for control, who thrived on deception, and who would do anything to keep her lies from unraveling. After weeks of testimony, the verdict was delivered. Guilty of second-degree murder. The sentencing was swift. Claire Matthews, once the picture-perfect wife, was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Daniel sat in the courtroom, tears in his eyes, staring at the woman he once thought was his soulmate. "She fooled everyone," he whispered. "Even me." Detective Hayes later reflected on the case in an interview. Claire Matthews wasn't just a woman living a double life. She was a master manipulator. 10 men, 10 lies, and 1 murder. In the end, her need for control destroyed not only her victims, but herself. The town of Crestwood would never forget the scandal. The name, Claire Matthews, became a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous monsters don't hide in the shadows. They live right beside us, smiling, pretending to be perfect. The perfect wife. The perfect neighbor. The perfect mother. But beneath it all, a woman who lived a double life with 10 men and ended it with murder. She lived 2 lives, and in the end, both came crashing down. 10 lovers, 1 murder, and a trail of destruction left in a quiet suburban town. Claire Matthews will spend the rest of her life behind bars, but the scars she left behind will never fade.